Okay, hello and welcome to wakilsahab.com. So today is 2nd of September 2020. So this is our LFJ lecture number 11. So today's honorable speaker is Miss Rideja Shah, and we are going to get a session from her on the topic how to study LLM in USA. So, friends, wakilsahab.com is a platform which is made for the helping the professional development of law students and lawyers in India. And please check out our website and all our social media platforms. And you can connect with us on the given number on the posters. And let me come to our honorable speaker. We are really thankful to Miss Rideja Shah for coming today and speaking to us. So I would want to introduce her, and I have a brief write up about her. So let me speak. Miss Hrideja Shah is a dual qualified attorney in India and California, and she works in the field of private equity and venture capital finance. After graduating from Jindal Global Law School, India, she went on to pursue Masters of Law for a specialization in business laws from School of Law, University of California, Berkeley. She is also the founder of Legal Solars, a blog on private equity and venture capital laws, and a venture that aims to help law students across the world to improve legal research and writing, and also provides mentoring guidance through the mentorship program. I have been following Miss Rideja's work from quite some time, and she is trying to help law students as much as possible in various aspects regarding, I think, resumes and internships and many things. Those people who are on LinkedIn, they may be following the popular posts of her. And first thing, thank you so much for coming, ma'am. And yes,
Thank you for having me.
thank you so much. Uh, second.
So, just before we start, if any of you have any questions during the entire presentation, just post them and we'll try to keep a track of all questions. And if you have any doubts, then make sure you ask. There's no such thing as my questions too stupid or too lame, because I've had a lot of people tell me I didn't know if I should ask. Just ask whatever it is, no matter what query it is.
Okay, ma'am, should I start the this thing? What do you say? Presentation?
Yeah, go
Okay.
ahead.
Okay. Can you see the screen, ma'am? I'm asking the audience
Yeah,
also. Can you guys see the
yeah,
screen?
I can see the screen.
Very good. Anyone from the audience, can you please confirm whether you are able to see the screen?
Could you just
Yes,
make it
sir.
in
Yes, I
slideshow
can
Yes,
see.
format?
visible, visible.
Yes, sir,
Yeah,
visible.
it's visible.
Thank,
Yes, sir, it is visible.
thank you so much. Yes, ma'am, you were saying something.
Yeah, can you just make it in slideshow format?
Sure. I'm going to click the slideshow button, and I think it's going to start. Yeah. Can you see this?
Yeah.
Yes. Just tell me whenever I need to go next. Thank you so much. Please start, ma'am. Thank you so much.
All right. If you can just go to the first slide itself.
Okay. This one?
All right. So the way I have made this presentation for everyone over here today is that I am first explaining why you should do an LLM, why you shouldn't do an LLM, and then how about you actually go about searching for LLM programs, and finally what you should do when you actually get admission in an LLM. So let me just walk you through the entire procedure. I don't think it will take more than half an hour. So I've kept half an hour for question and answers if you have any. So starting with why you should be doing an LLM. So the first thing that is the most popular reason why even I did an LLM is so that you can specialize in one particular area of law. Now, I did my specialization in business laws, as a lot of you might know. And I did so because I knew that I wanted to do corporate law. And I knew that this is something that I am interested in. And that's how I ended up finding my niche for venture capital finance. It wasn't something that I studied in general throughout my 5 years, and it wasn't something that I came across in general either. So venture financing was something that I actually took up during my LLM. So that's how I ended up specializing in business laws and majored in venture financing, which is what I practice now. The second reason why you should go for an LLM is if you worked for a couple of years. Let's say, for example, after graduating, you worked for 3 or 4 years and you worked in, let's say, IT area. But now you want to switch to corporate area and you want to actually know if you'll be able to adapt to corporate area. Then you do a specialization and switch your careers that way. So I've had a lot of people actually, in fact, that I met who vice versa, who were doing corporate and wanted to go into IPR or international law, or someone who wanted to do IPR from corporate. So one of the major reasons why I recommend LLM for anyone who doesn't know what to do after a certain point in their career is to try for LLM and try to study other subjects. The third most popular reason that I've come across for LLM is that you want to enter into academics. So if you come across like a lot of professors in law schools, they all have an LLM in from some or the other school. So the biggest reason for having an LLM is because LLM teaches you like not only how to particularly research in a subject, but it also teaches you a lot about leadership. It also teaches you a lot about how you're supposed to be in an environment with other students, specifically not from your own country. So which is why LLM becomes like a major option when you want to enter into academics. I wouldn't really recommend going for academics if you haven't really done an LLM, mainly because you wouldn't really know if this is something that you really want to enter into. And the other reason is that during your LLM, a lot of universities ask you to write thesis or dissertations on certain topics. And when you do that, you automatically embrace yourself for a particular area of law. And that's what becomes your entire area of practice or something that you would teach. The fourth reason that I've come across for doing an LLM is that I had a lot of friends during my LLM who had worked for 5-6 years. And okay, I'm getting my voice is not clear. Is it for everyone or is it just few people?
It's for everyone, ma'am.
Okay. What? Okay. For me, the voice is good. This is
Could you
Mehboob.
please speak much more loud?
For me, the voice is good, ma'am. Maybe if you could just click on the mute button and start again.
Slightly resounding, taking that madam place.
I think it's clear for some people and not clear for some people. So it might just be an internet connection issue.
Okay, for some people who are having audio issue, one good easy tip is that just log out and log in again many times. This solves the problem. Okay, ma'am, please continue.
All right. So the fourth reason that I've come across is that a lot of people who have worked for 5-6 years just need a particular break in their career. They don't want to take on more work, and they feel like for 1 year that this is the time that I should relax a bit and focus on something else, or just who want a vacation of sorts. So I've had a lot of people who have actually done an LLM, not only because they thought it would be nice for their career, but also because they wanted to take a 1-year break. So you only do that if you've actually worked for 5-6 years or more. I wouldn't recommend doing that if you. Is there still a lot of problem because I've always used the same system?
Yeah, go ahead. No worries. Go ahead.
All right. So, and the final reason why you should do an LLM is networking. And I think this particular concept has been around a lot. And I think if some of you who follow me on LinkedIn know that I'm a big advocate for networking and growing your own network. And that doesn't happen unless and until you've actually met different kind of people. During our law school, like at least while I was in law school, I never had someone who'd come and told me, oh, you need to go outside and network to people, or you need to reach out to lawyers. We had a very systematic approach that for internships, you apply like 8 months to 10 months in advance, or sometimes max, like minimum 6 months in advance. And you do your internship during your break, and that was it. Like, we never went out of our way to actually connect with people and sort of network and just get to know different kind of people. But today, networking is one of the main skills that a lot of lawyers do need to possess, because that's how you get your clients as well. So LLM is an excellent way to network because you meet so many different people. I've met probably people from, I think, almost 60 different countries. And just knowing someone from a different country automatically increases your network. So if today I have any problem that I need to be solved in Nigeria, for example, I already have someone that I can reach out to for any kind of help that I may need. So growing your network is one of the main reasons that you should do an LLM, but it's the last reason. You don't go for an LLM just because I need to do networking. Could you change the slide, please? All right. So because I get a lot of requests for when I should do my LLM, and I have a lot of people who come and tell me that I want to do an LLM because of so and so reason. So there are certain reasons that you do not take while actually thinking about LLM. The first one is it's an easy way to settle abroad and earn money, but it's actually not true. It's one of the most difficult ways to actually settle abroad. Is one, because recruiters don't pay attention to international students. Second, big law firms don't care if you've done your LLM from Harvard or if you've done your LLM from any other Ivy League school. For them, what matters is what are you offering that is not different from a JD student. And if you say, oh, I belong to a certain country and I know the laws of those country and I've worked there for 1 or 2 years, so I'm a good candidate. But it's actually not like that, because most of the firms already have tie-ups with Indian firms, or they already have tie-ups with a lot of other firms in other countries, or they have an office registered in that particular country already. So if you ever think that I want to do an LLM because I want to settle abroad, I don't think you should go with that mindset. Second is, doing an LLM will make me earn more in my own country. Again, that's not true. You may get, you might be able to actually show the employer that I have knowledge of a particular set of laws from a different country, but it will not give you more income. Your income is going to be the same of an associate who hasn't done an LLM. So the second reason why you should not do an LLM is that I think I will earn more in my own country. Third is I will get more job opportunities in my own country. And again, that's not true unless you have gone for LLM after 4 or 5 years. A lot of associates who go for LLM after 4 or 5 years for specialization, they come back and they join the same firm. In that case, you don't have to worry about getting a job. But when you're actually going just for the fact that once I come back to India, I will have more job opportunities, or I will be more desirable by law firms, again, that's not true, because the work that needs to be done is something that even an LLB graduate in the same position can do. So, of course, please don't go if you think that once I come back, I'll have more job opportunities, or that doing an LLM over there will get me a job. Fourth is, I've had a lot of students approach me and tell me that I haven't had good grades during my undergraduation or during my 5-year course or my 3-year course. And I think doing an LLM will increase my grades and then I can show that to get a job. Again, while if you don't have good grades, first of all, applying to good colleges abroad especially becomes a lot more difficult. So you will definitely need a lot more work experience to show that my grades don't really matter. But if you're going for an LLM right after your graduation, bad grades might not get you the college that you want. So definitely don't go because either, oh, I have bad grades and I can improve my grades by just studying one more year, or the fact that, I haven't really decided what I want to do in my life. So for example, let's say that you've completed your graduation, but you don't know what your area of interest is yet. You're interested in ADR, IPR, corporate, every single subject. In that case, if you go for a specialization abroad, you're wasting almost $90,000 minimum. That includes everything, like probably your stay and your other expenses, tuition. And what you're essentially doing is, after you specialize in a particular area and if you realize that, okay, this is not something that I want to work in, you've just wasted a lot of money. Even if you have scholarship, you've wasted one entire year of your life that you could have actually used for applying for a job or just interning with some firm, trying to understand how things work. And lastly, what I hear a lot of students say is that I don't have a job currently, so I might as well apply for LLM next year. And after graduating, I can just go. I don't have to worry about jobs. Again, if you're already deciding a year in advance that I don't have a job currently and that is why I want to go for an LLM, what you're doing is you're giving up on finding a job. And this has actually been one of the main reasons that I've come across recently because of the pandemic, that a lot of students have said that, oh, there aren't enough jobs on the market, and because I don't have a job, I might as well apply for higher studies. Again, it doesn't work that way. You have, if you're in your 4th year, or if you've just entered your final year, and if you're thinking that because I don't have a job yet or I don't have a PTO yet, and I should go for higher studies and just do an LLM, don't do it. I would recommend you actually sit down and start making applications every day. And you have an entire year to do it. So definitely don't do an LLM because you don't have a job currently. The best reason to do an LLM is if you know what your specialization is, you know this is what you want to make your career in, and this is exactly how your career will advance after a certain point. Could you change the slide, please? All right. So once you've decided that you want to do an LLM, you also need to decide what university suits you the best. So first thing is, if you have your specialization area ready, you start researching what are the best law schools for that. So for example, for business laws, Harvard, Columbia, NYU, Berkeley, and Stanford were my top 5 choices. Of course, I was going after graduating, and I knew what I wanted to specialize in, and I knew that this is what I'm going to make my career in because I had done a lot of corporate internships and I just loved working, and I knew certain workings of the firm as well in that area. So I decided that I'm going to specialize, and I started my research. So the first research that you do is depending on when you're going for your LLM. If you're going right after graduation, knowing what you want to specialize in, you look at colleges that will take you in without any work experience. Then you look at colleges that have the best specialization course, and then you look at whether a particular college, what's its ranking and how exactly do they offer courses. So do your research, and do that research at least a year before you're applying so that you have a clear idea of what you're doing. Second, Berkeley doesn't take people without work experience. It's very few that they actually take without work experience. And I think I was really lucky to get in without work experience. But most of the people I met had at least 1 year of experience before coming in. Second, the best way to decide apart from your specialization is just looking at the courses in general. Like you see the kind of electives they are offering, you see the kind of innovative courses that they are offering. So, for example, Berkeley had a venture capital deal bootcamp and a M&A bootcamp. What that did was we actually had partners of law firms come in and teach us and take us through the transaction of a particular company. Like, for example, if under venture capital it was financing Series A of a company, they actually took us through the entire paperwork and they made us do it and they made us file it. So they gave us a proper hypothetical company, that this is a company, these are the formation papers, and this is how we wanted to do the financing. So it's those kind of courses that you need to look at. Then the other thing that Berkeley had was video game law, and I don't think that's something that I've come across that often, like learning about a law that is specifically for video games. So look at the courses that the college is offering and look at how that fits into your career. The third thing that I said was ranking. Of course, like always choose the top 10 law school if you can, because top 10 law school gives you a lot more opportunities for networking and a lot more opportunities for probably getting your work published as an international student. So I know it sounds bad, but a lot of times, if you're not in the top 10 colleges, international students face a lot of problem. And I've seen that happening with a couple of students who've gone abroad and who've contacted me saying that, I'm facing a problem during networking events, that they don't really take me seriously. So first and foremost, of course, there's a sort of a discrimination, but I won't call it discrimination, but sort of, if you're an international student, automatically the chances of networking go low because they know that they'll probably have to sponsor you and they'll probably have to train you a lot more differently than the way JD students are. So again, if you choose a top 10, it's a lot more better because I think Berkeley had a lot more networking events and that actually helped me a lot. So always try and go for top 10 or top 20. I wouldn't recommend going below like top 20, like don't go to a school that's from 21 to 50. If you have a particular area of exposure and you can probably work for 1 or 2 years, then definitely wait for a year, apply to Columbia instead of going to some other law school. Apply to NYU or Harvard if you have an option, if you know that within a year you can accomplish a lot more. So definitely do that. And the last thing that I did was research to professors. So the professors that taught me were actually partners in law firms or had books written on the specialization area that I wanted to go in. So that's what actually makes a lot of difference because you're being taught by someone whose book is already being used throughout the nation to teach you that particular subject. So for example, M&A subject was being taught by a professor who had actually written the book on M&A with another person. So that's what matters a lot. So you want to choose your university where the opportunities themselves increase a lot more just because they have the right professors, they have the right ranking, and they have the right particular set of courses for international students. So this is a specialized course and you want to take advantage of that particular thing. You don't want to go to a school wherein you don't have a mixture of either of those. Could you change the slide, please? All right. And so the final slide of what I did once I started studying for LLM. First thing, always do your readings for each and every subject. So I know a lot of us in India, at least, we don't, at least I didn't do my readings regularly for classes during law school. I think most of us tend to study at the end of semester and just ask for notes from someone or take up legal guides and probably do our best in school. So I never actually, throughout law school, I didn't really do much reading. And because we didn't really have cold call system either, it was always either they tell you that this is the day you need to make a presentation and please do the reading, or there was always an interactive session going on during the class. But abroad, it's completely different. They expect you to do the reading, they expect you to be prepared, ask questions, and you can get cold called anytime. So if you don't know what you're being taught, you'll probably fall into a really bad impression for the professor, and you don't want that. Second, attend seminars organized by the university. So like I said, that Berkeley had a lot of seminars, and so does every other university. They have this concept of lunch webinars or lunch seminars or a symposium being conducted almost every day or every other weekend. So the lunch seminars were every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, and the symposiums were every weekend. So there was always a wide variety of people that I could meet, and that's how I actually started networking as well. Because I met a lot of different kind of people. I met general counsels of top companies. I met law firm associates. I met partners. So it was really good, and it was really nice to attend those seminars and always take notes in those seminars. Because when you take notes, you probably get a question, and when you ask a question to the speaker, it puts you in the eye of the speaker and automatically opens you to an opportunity of just talking to the person after the seminar is over, which a lot of people don't do. So attend seminars, pay attention in those seminars, and definitely like ask questions, even if it's a question that has an easy answer. Just ask a question. Third is interacting with professors. So after classes get over, always interact with your professors. Tell them that you're really interested in the subject and you love the way they're teaching, and that you would want to do some research work for them, or would want to see if there's anything that they could help you with for the classes. So what this does is it actually shows that you're passionate about the particular area of law, and if you ever ask for a recommendation from that professor, you'll get it. So the M&A professor that I was talking about before, I actually have a recommendation from him because I made sure that I asked questions, I was well prepared. I made sure that if he had some research work, he assigns it to me. It's a lot to take in, but it works really well when you want to put yourself out there as a international student who wants a job. It really helps. Fourth is preparing an outline of this, but like for even during your class, even if you've done the readings, prepare an outline for your notes and discuss it with whoever you want. Like you make a study group and discuss it, or you study on your own. But study group actually helps because you're going to be in a study group with people from probably like 3 or 4 different countries, and each of them will have a different way of thinking or a different perspective on how a particular area needs to be done. So always make a study group or join one. Then it's about societies. So for example, I was a part of Berkeley Business Law Journal. I was the team coach for the Berkeley Moot Court Society. I did a lot of extracurricular activities. I was a part of the Global Business Symposium. So I made sure I joined enough societies so that I can meet more people. I can even think about research topics and probably write and get it published with the help of the professors that I knew. So always join a study group or join societies that the law school has. you see that most of those societies have a lot of JD students, but if you become a part as an LLM student, it actually helps a lot because then you make friends with JD students, you understand their type of legal research and writing, and it gives you a lot more exposure to what kind of work they do as a summer associate, and thereon actually manage to get a job somewhere. And lastly, connect with as many people as you can. I think I've stressed on this enough throughout my presentation that you absolutely need to connect with people, network with people, no matter what happens. Just be present there and connect with them. So I think that's the end of the presentation. Or is there one more slide? Okay, I think that is the end of presentation. So we have 20 more minutes.
One second.
Should we open it for questions?
Okay. Okay. Can you hear me, ma'am?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, let me exercise my what do you say, moderator's privilege and ask the first
Okay.
question. So you have studied at University of California. So what are the requirements for the course there? Like, what are the traditional things? Do you have some kind of third party entrance exam, like for engineering and other courses? You have GRE, GMAT things. So do you have some kind of that criteria? What are the list of things, like do they just need a resume?
So
what
of
are
course,
what
like
are the things like GPA
for
and all,
LLM,
GPA
for
and other
LLM
things?
in US, they actually have their own particular system of filing for LLM. So for any law school, for that matter, in US, you need a great statement of purpose, at least 2 to 3 letter of recommendations, really good grades, and a well-formatted CV. So your CV, when you're applying, can be in the format of your own country. But once you reach there, of course, you have to change the CV to the format that that particular country follows. But I would definitely say that if you want to get into Ivy League schools, letter of recommendation. So I think the first thing that comes is your statement of purpose. Second thing that comes is your grades. If you're applying right after graduation, but if you're applying after few years of work experience, then it's your statement of purpose and work experience together, parallel, like they have a parallel connection. And then comes your letter of recommendation. But if you're a graduate who doesn't have work experience, then it's your statement of purpose, grades, and what kind of letter of recommendations you're getting.
So, in my past life, I have been in California. I was originally from the engineering side. So, there are certain things which we had, like I had done a master's there then. So, we had a concept like we were supposed to apply one year ahead, or you can say 1 year earlier than the actual start of the course, which makes you a bit ahead in the race, number one. Number two, it helps you to seek some scholarship, some TA, RA, some assistantship kind of thing. Is it the same with the LLM course? Will it help applying early? Is there any scholarship?
So, LLM, all LLM applications happen a year in advance. So it's not like India where you get admission after graduating, like how we graduate from school and within 2-3 months we go into our undergrad. It's not how that works. For LLM, of course, most law schools are done, close their LLM applications between November to January first week. So that is the time frame that you apply. It doesn't matter if you're applying on the very last day of the deadline or whether you're applying on the first day of the deadline. I made my application on the last day of the deadline. So I took my own sweet time to make sure that everything was in order.
Okay.
But So yeah, it doesn't matter when you apply. It's not first come first serve. They only start evaluating the entire application material once the deadline has closed. Only in some cases you get like an early admission, but those are like exceptional cases that they know that no matter what happens, this particular applicant is like exceptional, and even if compared to other application materials, I don't think we can come across something like this. That's when you get like an early admission. Otherwise, it doesn't matter. As long as you apply within the time frame, you're good to go. Um, the
The
other
la-
thing is you. So for me, I had a waiver in English language. So a lot of law schools in US will ask, to show us like the proficiency test that you are good with English. And for me, I had a waiver because I've been educated in English school, like English medium school throughout, and general of course was English medium. So there was never any situation wherein I actually studied in a different language. So I got a waiver automatically because of that. So I never really had to take a proficiency test of any sort. So if someone has a question on that, I have no idea because I never applied for it or took it.
Absolutely. I may help in that question about the English proficiency test. I'm a trainer on that too. One last question on the list of things. I'll just get into the chat box and we'll try to take questions from the mic. LLM from the West, like top countries like USA and UK, is considered costly, and the cost of studying, like traditionally they have a 1 year LLM, we have 2 years LLM generally in India. Now in the last 6-7 years we have started getting 1 year LLM in India. The question is, ma'am, when the cost is about 30 lakh rupees to about 60 lakh rupees. Number two, I know about the immigration limitations after studying. So no one is there with open hands to give you H1 visa and things like that. I'm aware of that. So the point is, when you're spending about 30 to 60 lakh rupees, are there any scholarships? Are there any jobs at the university? How is a person going to fund his or her education? Kindly put some light on that.
So it actually depends. Scholarships, there are a lot, but the competition is really, really high. So the chances of getting that is very minimal. So I know for a fact that Berkeley does not give scholarships. It only has two merit-based scholarships that go to the most meritorious person, and like probably you need to be like this one, some genius, because I tried, but I never got one. From Berkeley, at least I didn't. But other law schools in general, I know USC actually does give a good scholarship. I think USC has up to 50% scholarship given for the top candidates.
You may kindly,
Harvard,
I'm sorry, you may kindly tell the full form of that university, ma'am. UST, you said?
Southern California, University of Southern California. So USC actually does give scholarships. NYU and Columbia, not so much, but they do have scholarships. But the point is that because there are so many people applying, getting a financial aid from university is really difficult. Otherwise, you have like a lot of other scholarships available, like the Fulbright scholarship or the Tata Ratan scholarship, or I think there was 4 or 5 more scholarships. You just have to research scholarships for LLM abroad given to Indian students. I think that was the only thing I researched. And yeah, you can apply. But again, most of those scholarships go to Harvard or Yale or Columbia or Stanford kind of students, because a lot of the scholarships want you to go to the Ivy League schools, like, because that's what the hype is over there. Like how we have NLU versus non-NLU debate that keeps on happening. Over there, there's the entire debate of going to an Ivy League school or a non-Ivy League school. So yeah, I mean, being in the top 10 is like a requirement for a lot of scholarships.
I had read about JD. There are a lot of things I had researched long time back, but there is also a difference between a ABA approved law school and a state approved
That's
law
true.
school and
That's
things
true.
like that.
That's true.
And
So Ivy League
kind of.
schools are ABA approved, of course. And then you have like a few law schools who are non-ABA approved but state approved. So I think the Golden State University in California, I think in San Francisco, is a California approved law school. It's not a
Very costly.
ABA approved law school.
I think.
So what happens when you go to a state approved law school is, first of all, you can't take the bar exam of that particular. If let's say for example you go to California approved law school, you can't take the New York bar exam no matter what you do, because your LLM is not finishing the utmost requirement, that is ABA approved law school. So when you go to a state approved law school, automatically you can't take the bar exam of anywhere in US. In fact, even for California, I think LLMs need to be from ABA approved if you're going through the LLM route. But otherwise, as a foreign attorney, I think you can take the bar exam. But again, I don't recommend doing that to a lot of people, is because when you need to know the legal research and writing of that particular country. US legal research and writing is poles apart from Indian legal research and writing. Over here, we have a tendency to write and write and write and keep on writing longer sentences. US, you have to have it's very different. It's shorter sentences. The grammatical context is different. Your citation formats are different. So, of course, when you're taking the bar exam, if you don't know how the legal research and writing works over there, you're at a huge loss, no matter what bar prep course you end up taking.
Okay. 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 Really nice to know that, and I think there have been very important points being shared by Ms. Ridhija Shah. She has practically seen that, and important thing as she was suggesting is that you also have to see which college you're studying and where you're studying, and sometimes there is a difference between national colleges and state colleges there, and those people who study from state colleges, they are limited to getting the practice permission to that limited state. I have read about this California, New York thing. Sometimes if you clear California, some other states, neighboring states might allow you to write the exam. So please do lot of research. And today I was reading your article, I think your interview article on passing the bar exam. I could read how much struggle you went through, and that two words are stuck in my mind: panic attack. So so I have
It's very competitive, and I did fail the first time. It's the second attempt that I passed, and the first attempt, it's not like I failed by a huge margin, but I did fail. And of course, you've never failed in India. I mean, throughout my life, I'd never failed in any subject. So when you fail an important exam, it does take you through a lot of mental pressure, and especially knowing that that is the only way you can establish yourself in that particular community, by saying that JD students have bar license, I have a bar license, and I have a bar license from another country. So now I'm at an equal stance to that of JD students, because I clearly know your legal research and writing because I passed the bar exam, right? So yeah, I had panic attacks, I was more anxious, I think, and in general, it's not a good journey to go through if you're not well prepared. And even after studying for hours, if I failed the first time, I think that's actually, it's a good thing that I failed the first time, because if you've never failed in your life, I think that there are certain qualities you don't pick up on. So I think that helped me a lot, because that's when I got a certain different mindset of how I want to get things done. So yeah.
My request to your friends is that in the chat box I have shared the article in which Ms. Ridhija has been interviewed by Amicus Partners. The California bar exam is supposed to be done after your studies to get the license in that particular state. So you may read more, and you have other places to read. Can I read the questions for you, ma'am?
Yeah, go ahead.
Chalo, I'll go to the top and number one question is there any age limit for admission in LLM? Gayatri is asking
No,
this.
no, there is no age limit. I'm friends with a person who is like my dad's age right now, and he has like 3 kids, and he has come from Turkey, and he is one of my really good friends from LLM. So there is no age limit. You can do an LLM at any time you want. In fact, there are JD students who are above 40. So in US, there is no age limit in entering law school because their entire education system is different. Their education system has like a 4-year degree, which is enough to get them a job and continue working. And law is a specialization that they do. Unlike over here, that is a profession that we take up. Over there, law is a specialization. So you actually, if they do a 4-year degree, they can work as a paralegal or legal assistant, which is not the case here. So there's no age limit.
Okay, great. Maheshwar is asking that he is starting, I think, his 4th year now in his LLB. He has 2 years to prepare for LLM. So he's saying, okay, what should I do in these 2 years so that I could be well prepared for higher studies, number one. And he's asking suggestions for which college to apply.
So again, I can't give suggestions because that's up to you and how you want to take your career and where you want to specialize in. So that's your choice, and no one can tell you that this is where you need to apply. It's something that just it should come from within you. This is the college that I think suits me the most, and this is where I think I'll be happier studying, being away from family. You need to take all of that into consideration. And second, I cannot stress this enough. Make sure that if you're going right after graduation, you know why you're going for your LLM. You do not want to regret your decision of going for an LLM right after graduation and then realizing I could have done something else as my specialization, or I could have worked for a few years and probably gotten work experience to help me put myself better in the international community. Make sure you know why you're going for LLM. Don't go because of the reasons that I stated in my presentation already.
Thank you so much. I'll go to Miss Ayushi. Ayushi has asked two questions. Number one is she wants to know about US job market, especially for immigrants. The second question is relating to scholarship, which you have already answered. You can take the first one about job market for US and especially immigrants.
To be very honest, it's really bad for Indian students because number one, international law firms don't have offices in India. So they would rather choose, even if you have like the best work experience and you're really well rounded student, they will choose someone from European countries or a country where they already have their branch or more work from. So for Indian students, it's not good. You're going to struggle if you're, like I said, if you want to do an LLM because you think I will get a job and earn more, no, that's not how it's going to be. I'm telling you from my own personal struggles that it's not an easy task. I have seen people with 5 years of work experience not getting through, and she was someone who was in the dean's list in the first semester. I wasn't in the dean's list in the first semester, and she couldn't get through job only because she was an international student, despite having the grades, despite having work experience for 5 years, that too from Spain. So I would say it's really bad, and especially now because of the pandemic and because of Trump, clearly because he doesn't want Indian immigrants to come back. So it's a really bad market. I wouldn't, unless you're ready for the struggle, I wouldn't recommend it.
Okay. Okay. Venkata Badrinath is asking what are the job opportunities available for LLM students in India? I think he is suggesting about someone.
So when you come back. So I think, so like I said in my presentation, that most law firms, if you've gone for an LLM after working for 3-4 years, they actually take you back immediately because they know that you now, when you have a client from, let's say, US, or if you've gone to UK, and if a firm from US or UK or any other country approaches you, you know the set of laws and you are at a better position to deal with those clients because you've spent 1 year there, so you know sort of the working of that culture. Even if you don't know how that law firm works, you know the working of how their culture is for work or for any other thing. So in India, I wouldn't say it increases your job opportunity, but it definitely, like, if you have to argue your case out, it definitely puts you at a place where you can stand out a bit.
Okay, Mr. Tarun has asked a question. I'll rephrase it. He's asking, how much would someone spend on studying abroad, studying LLM?
Um, Honestly, like, it depends on your financial capabilities. If your financial um, capability isn't that strong, I wouldn't recommend going for LLM because even if you get a scholarship, you are going to have those extra expenses. But here's the thing, what I did was during LLM is that I worked part time as well. And they usually don't allow you to work outside campus. It's only on campus that you can take up a job. And I took up a job in a gym because, well, that was the only thing available. And then the other thing was a call center. And I really wasn't looking to go to a call center and answer questions. So, or like make calls. So I ended up taking a job at the gym. And what I had to do was basically just go for 2 hours every day to the gym, and that was it. But
Be,
you can, yeah, you
been
can
there,
always,
seen that.
yeah, you can always take up a part-time job on campus and get like some extra money for your pocket. But even if you have a scholarship, I mean, it's difficult because the rent prices are crazy, especially in New York and San Francisco. And if you're going to some other university, like even Harvard area, Boston has like Boston, Chicago, New York, San Francisco, Seattle, all of these places, the rent prices are crazy high. So you always have to take in those. So I wouldn't recommend spending like maximum, like I would recommend spending $50,000. And considering like when I went, the rate was a lot more lower than today, at least 15 rupees lower when I went. So definitely, like, if you don't have a scholarship in the current times, it's going to be very difficult.
Okay, okay. Ma'am has given a very holistic answer, not just the budget, but the city where you're living and what kind of facilities you have there, whether you are able to make some money on the side or not, or if you get some job on the campus or the university, that also has to be considered. Let me go to Miss Yuvanshi Sharma. Friends, if you want to ask a question on mic, you're welcome to ask. We'll go one by one. So let me finish with Yuvanshi's question. She's asking, how are the universities in Texas for masters? Can anyone get a job there after the course?
I really don't know about Texas because I never considered um, Texas as one of the states where I wanted to study. It was either California or New York. I didn't really look for any other places, and I only applied to Berkeley for LLM. So I'm really sorry, but I don't think I can answer that question efficiently.
Okay, there is one user, I'm trying to rephrase the question. The question is kind of asking, will the exams of undergraduate studies matter?
What do you mean by exams matter? I mean, are you if is the person asking if the grades matter?
I guess.
So like I said, if you're going directly after graduation without any work experience, they are going to look at your grades along your statement of purpose side by side. Because what happens is when you're going directly after graduation, the only thing that they can assess you on is how well you've performed in your undergraduate degree. And most international universities, or most, like, I would say, universities abroad, that is the only way they can actually see if a person will fit well into the university. Especially if you're going in top 10, of course, like just like how in India we give CLAT and our score determines where we go, or if we give LSAT or MSAT or an LUD exam, whichever exam you're giving basically. So grades do matter if you're going directly after graduation.
Okay, I think one general point to be understood is the universities have to judge you on your last performance, how you have been doing in the recent years, so that they could judge you on that. That is,
I don't think it's only the last year. It's like if in the first 4 years you've performed like, let's say, 6 out of 10 as CGP as your CGPA, your cumulative grade, and in your final year your GPA, just your grade overall, is 8 on 10. It doesn't matter. They will look at your cumulative grade, and your
I,
cumulative grade is not going to come out to be somewhat in the top 20 of your batch or top 30 of your batch. So for me, what helped getting into Berkeley was the fact that I was in the top 10 of my batch in general. So that actually helped me a lot. Like, I had good grades, and I also did a lot of extracurriculars. So I think this is what I missed out on in my lecture, is that they don't only look at grades, but they also want someone who's done other activities. I mean, you can't be only book smart. So I was part of Mood Society. I was part of the dance society, part of the sports club, part of. So basically, I was involved in a lot of different activities. I was involved with organizing events on campus. So I made sure that I had a foot in every door on my campus during general, whatever they had to offer. And whatever I could actually fit into, I went there and managed. Because when they look at a CV that, okay, so this girl has done extracurriculars. I was spearheading a national research project with a professor. I was a research assistant. I was teaching assistant for 3 years. So all of that matters. So it's not only great, but overall.
I would want to rephrase what I wanted to say, is that I did not mean the last year of studies, but let's say a particular person is working in a law firm from some years, and now he wants to apply. So I'm saying what is the latest situation the person is in, how he has been performing. For example, after my law studies, I'm not working for about 1 or 2 years, and at that time I'm applying, then they will see my latest work in the recent. That's what I was suggesting. I'll go to the next question. Jagrit Chawla is asking, if I can rephrase the question, he is asking whether you should immediately go for a LLM after the LLB, or should you give a gap of 2 years?
Like I said, it depends on the person. For me, it made sense to go because that's what I wanted to specialize in. And I had made my mind that this is what I want to make my career in. And which is why I chose that directly after graduation made sense. I did have offers from law firms. It's not like I didn't have a job. I could have easily worked for a few years, but I just decided it was the right thing for me. And I thought, knowing myself, judging my own self, I knew that I would never actually take up going for LLM after working for a few years, because I'm workaholic by nature. So once I get into work, like even right now, I have legal followers and I have my own job. Plus, I write blogs. So it's a lot of work that I do, but I like doing that. So I know that I wouldn't have taken up LLM after working for a few years, and I would have just continued. So it depends on your own personal choice. But recommendation is take work experience if you don't know what you want to do, because work experience actually gives you a taste of whether you're meant for that particular area of law or not.
Okay, great. There is a user, I can't see the name. Let me simplify his question. The question is, what is the difference between JD and LLM? Which is better and why? And they're asking what is the procedure also.
Okay, so JD is basically your LLB in India. It's their particular law course. They call it JD. It's called Juris Doctorate, and like Bachelor of Laws, JD is their particular Bachelor of Laws. And the difference is, of course, like JD, as a JD student, like how in India you study all the law subjects during your LLB. It's similarly for JD. They're basically studying law. They're basically studying law to become lawyers. So it's same as LLB. So the difference between LLB and LLM is the same as the difference between JD and LLM. Procedure is the same as how in India you give SLAT, over there you give LSAT. So you have an entrance exam. But again, I don't recommend, if your follow-up question is going to be, should I go for JD, which I get a lot. Know this, that JD is $60,000 a year, not for the entire 3 years. For 1 year, it's 60,000. So your 1 year LLM course costs the same as 1 year of JD. So basically, you're spending $180,000 for your JD program plus your living expenses. So you're spending close to
250.
400,000. So 3 years of rent plus food plus other expenses. So I would say easily $400,000 to $500,000, and that is the reason why why there's so much student debt in US. I mean, if some of you have seen Patriot Act with Hassan Minhaj, I like to watch it a lot. But if you've seen, he actually talks about student debt and how it has evolved and how there's an entire system of student debt. And precisely why a lot of people end up paying debt for like 10 years after they graduate is because the cost is so high.
Okay, let me go. I think Jyotika ask a question, but the question is not clear. She's saying we study our Indian law here and then we go to the other country and study their law. Is it useful or recommended? I don't know from which perspective she's asking. If you want to answer, you can answer, or we can move ahead.
I mean, I don't know. I mean,
Okay.
Of course, if you go abroad, you study their laws, but I'm not sure what she means by if it's useful or recommended. I mean,
Okay, no worries.
yeah,
Let's.
I really don't know what to answer for that.
Okay, Meghna Ravali is asking, it is said that the LLM course from certain universities in US is not valid in India. So could you please some light on that?
I haven't come across any courses that are not valid. Again, like I said, my research was only the top 10 universities. I never went below that. Like, my only goal was to get into top 10. I didn't look at other universities. I didn't look at backup options. If it wasn't top 10, I was going to take up the job in India that I had, and that was it. Like, either top 10 or job. So for a fact, I know that the top 10 universities for LLM in US, their LLMs are valid because those top 10 are Berkeley, Harvard, Columbia, Stanford, NYU, then USC, I think, is number 13 right now, but when I was applying, it was, I think, number 9. Which else? I forget the universities that were in top 10 at that time, but yeah, point being that I didn't look at any university apart from top 10, so I don't know if there are certain universities whose course is not valid in India.
Okay, one question, if someone is looking for good university rankings, the website is called as usnews.com. They give the rankings for a lot of courses, you can check out that. And number two, answering Miss Meghana, the question about validity of LLM course is that mainly in India, LLM is used as a criteria for allowing some person to teach in a law school. So you have to check with Bar Council of India, number one. Number two, Bar Council of India has approved a 1-year LLM from I think 2013. But there is a slight disagreement with UGC. UGC asks for 2-year LLM for PhD. So you may do a bit research on that before you think about going ahead. Let me go forward. Madam, do you have any thoughts on LLM from National University of Singapore? Rudrika is asking.
I didn't research Singapore, but I do have a couple of friends who have gone to NUS and they have really loved it. So, I mean, yeah, they've like I have had a close friend who's gone to NUS and she's told me that the professors and the way it's taught is very different and she's found it to be really useful. And it's actually really well known for, I think, arbitration, if I'm not wrong. So, yeah, I think that's all the information I have on that school.
The name Singapore, that poor is like any more town in India. Okay, let me go forward. One question is asking about percentage required to apply for LLM. I'll just, I think, answer it that it will depend from university to university. Just check out the requirement. Let me go to the next one. Ritu Jaiswal is asking, can you please talk about various scholarships which are available? I think it will depend on the university. Miss Ridija will may comment.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, universities abroad, like they don't really have too many scholarships. Very few colleges actually give scholarships. So you should, when you're applying for LLM, once you've shortlisted the colleges where you're applying, shoot them an email and ask what are the scholarship options. Usually it's their website, so you don't shoot them an email unless you've checked their website. First of all, they do not like answering to questions which can easily be found on their website. So yeah, and most law colleges, like I think every law school website has the financial aid information available for international students separately. So check that out. And a lot of colleges, like I said, like Berkeley, they have like a merit-based scholarship for international students, which is given to 2 students. So apart from that, there are a lot of Indian scholarships that I spoke about, like Fulbright or Ratan Tata, or there was one particular scholarship that I do remember was very well known, but I can't remember the name. I'll have to probably
no worries.
Go back to my email and see what that was. There are a couple of other scholarships, like there are at least I think 5 Indian scholarships that are available. So yeah, but like I said, the competition is fierce for that. So for example, if you think that by applying for all 5 scholarships, I'll get easily one of them, that's not true, because there are at least, I would say, 10,000 other students applying for that scholarship every year. So it's not easy to get a scholarship from India as well. Over there, your work experience and your academic performance will matter a lot.
Amazing. One important point which the honorable speaker has said is, please explore the website of each university. You will find some of the other information. After you are exhausted, just send them an email if you have any doubts. Let me go to the next. One person is asking, what is the procedure of applying for summer school?
I wouldn't know. For me, summer schools, I mean, do you mean like summer session LLMs, or do you mean summer school as in like Jindal had summer school exchanges which I went for, and we applied by replying to the email and sending in our statement of purpose. So I think that's all I did to apply for summer schools from Jindal. I haven't applied for summer school LLM, like summer session LLM. So I wouldn't know.
Okay, Hima is asking a question. The question is that which specialization should be taken in LLM so that when we come back, it helps us in India. Like for Indian students, which specialization looks good according to you?
I think it depends on your area of interest. I mean, yeah, I mean, you can't have one area of specialization that is above all. It depends on your particular area of interest and what you want to make your career in. So, yeah, as simple as that. Like, if you want to make your career in, for example, arbitration, you go for an area specialization. If you want to go for IP laws, you study IP laws. That's what is going to bring you an advantage in your career and not which is the best one to do. I think doing the specialization from a particular university which has the best course or the best specialization for that, that's what should be looked into, not which specialization is the best. More on which college offers and which college has the best standing for that particular specialization. So, for example, like I said, Columbia and Harvard are really known for their business laws, including Berkeley. So, you choose based on the university and not based on the course.
Okay, thank you so much. Indian Babu is asking about LLM in UK. I'm really sorry. This session is mostly towards about US. We will not get into the UK thing as of now. Next, Sadiq Shakil, your question is not clear. I'm sorry. Spelling mistakes are there. Okay. Again, a simple question is asked: should JD be recommended? And okay, a lot of people are saying hi to you, ma'am.
Okay, hello people.
Thank you so much. Anyone wants to ask a question through your voice? We are about to close the session. Hello.
Yeah, hi. Myself, Hima. Like, I just want to reframe my question, ma'am. See, like, I want to know. See, we have studied something in India, right? Some course, and we have gone through different subjects. And if you want to go abroad because of few reasons and all, I want these subjects which we studied in India, like whatever knowledge we have, can we, when you're choosing the subjects, okay, can we use this knowledge? I just want to know which subjects we can choose so that we will use some knowledge which we studied all these 3 years, 5 years course.
Again, I mean, so let me get this correct. You are saying how to choose your LLM subjects based on the subjects you've studied in India.
Exactly right.
Okay, again, it depends on your specialization. So if you're going for business laws, right? You want to specialize in, so we don't get taught M&A separately or private equity separately, which is what an LLM does. In LLM, the subjects are broken down. You're doing specialization in corporate laws, which means you're going to study corporate law subjects. So it depends on your specialization. It's not that if you're going for a general LLM, then it's different wherein you have to choose. But again, general LLMs don't really add value that much. Specialization add a lot more value. So, I mean, if you've studied company law and let's say you decided that, okay, after studying company law, I want to go into corporate and I feel like that is an area of law that I will definitely have an excellent career in. So when you decide for your LLM, let's say you decide after 2 years of working. Now, when you're working in a law firm, you will either be put in capital markets team, you'll be put in private equity team, you'll be put either in general corporate team, or you'll be put in insolvency and debt restructuring team. So there are different teams in law firms. So automatically after your first 3 months of rotation, you will already know what kind of work you want to get involved in. And then when you go for LLM, you can accordingly choose. But if you're going directly after graduation and you know that you want to do corporate law, just take up every corporate law subject within the amount of credits that you can take and then start deciding, okay, these are my top 5 that I want to study in this semester and these are the top 5 that I want to study in next semester. That's how you do it. But in the end, you'll be studying one particular area of law and within that you'll find your niche. Like venture capital finance is something I found because I was doing a specialization in corporate law. It's not something that I got to know while studying in general. I don't think it's a course that any law school teaches. that a specific course on venture financing, right? So it depends. Is that much more clear for you?
Yeah, thank you. Got it. Thank you so much.
I think these topics are very interesting. Maybe in the future we may request the honorable speaker to speak on the corporate subjects. Hopefully, so PN Santosh Kumar is saying thanks, ma'am. Tatikonda Kunero is saying excellent session, ma'am. And I'll just want to ask anyone wants to ask any concluding questions. Hima is saying thank you so much. Yes, yes, friends. Anyone wants to speak?
I think everyone's done with the questions. So if any of you have any questions more after this session, you can always reach out to me on LinkedIn and follow Legal Scholars if you want. And I post a lot of tips for LLM, CV, cover letter, statement of purpose, a lot more on my LinkedIn and Legal Scholars Instagram. So you're most welcome to ask me a question over there.
Absolutely. You guys can find ma'am on LinkedIn. Her name is Hrideja Shah, the same spelling which you see on the posters. Number two thing is she has a page they're called as Legal Scholars. She's running that platform. I thought first it is sellers, I'm sorry, but I had to read it. Then that Shashi Tharoor Raut, I got to know that SOLLERS, actually some word exists and it means some adroit, some perfection, some things like that. So a lot of people now are coming up with very new terms. So we have to learn new words now. Legal Scholars, SOLLERS. You can find it on LinkedIn. I think especially law students will benefit a lot. So two things. First thing, I would want to thank Ms. Hrideja Shah for coming to this meeting and speaking to us and sharing all her experience, what she has seen in the US and India so far, and for giving her precious time. Thank you very, very much, ma'am. And second thing is, friends, vakilsahab.com is a platform for legal knowledge sharing. Please check out our website. We have our pages on LinkedIn, Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook, and we have different updates group on WhatsApp. So let me check. We have some upcoming talks. Hopefully, I'm going to share the poster soon. 7th September, we are going to have an overview of anti-corruption laws by Mr. Kushank Sindhu. Is from Delhi, and we have our honorable speaker L. Ravichander sir. He is present today. He is a designated senior advocate of the states High Court of States for Telangana and Andhra Pradesh. Hopefully, he is going to take a session on 9th September evening on public interest litigation. On around 12th, we have a session on law and political parties and election law in India on 12th by Professor Afroz Alam. He is the head of the Department of Political Science at Manu, Maulana Azad National Urdu University, Hyderabad. So just keep following our updates. We will come with more programs. Ma'am, thank you so much. You may say something if you want to say your concluding remarks.
No, I think just thank you for having me, and I hope everyone found this session to be useful and had some clarity on when they should do an LLM or why they should do one and how they can go about choosing their particular set of colleges and what exactly needs to be done while thinking about LLM. Because I actually did like a proper 6-month research and ended up narrowing into one law school that I wanted to apply to. And yeah, I made 100% effort in only one law school. I only applied to Berkeley. So I didn't even have a backup in LLM schools. So if you're doing that, then definitely like make sure you've gotten all of the research correct.
Okay, I think final advice is, I think it's a very good advice. Do research a lot, you will get good points. I just want to take some comments. Jagrit Chawla is saying such an insightful session. Thanks a lot. Virni Sneha is saying thanks, ma'am. Adyasha Nupur is saying thank you so much, ma'am. Ashok Kumar is saying thank you, ma'am. Given a lot of information. Hima is saying seriously useful, such great session. Thank you. And thank you very, very much. Hopefully, after some time, after some days, we'll try to upload this video on YouTube. Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you to the speaker. Thank you to the audience for coming today. Please keep joining for other sessions. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Have a good night, everyone.
Good night.